Hello, everybody. This is Bert Copeland with New Life CFO Services. I'm so glad you could join us today. We get asked all the time by people, when is the appropriate time to hire a CFO? Do I need a CFO? What is a fractional CFO? And should I hire a fractional or interim CFO versus a full-time CFO? We get those questions all the time, so I want to spend a little time with you today to help you understand what's the appropriate fit for you and when does that really come into play. Now, at New Life, we're very proud of what we do, but I'll tell you, we're not always the right answer. So as you go through this, listen for what is the right answer for you. And one commitment that we make to anybody that wants to be curious about our services is if we are not the right fit for you, either skills-wise, industry, or culture, we will connect you to somebody that is. I know that sounds silly, but I know my competitors better than you do, and I could probably connect you pretty readily. In fact, I do that 3 or 4 times every year because we want to make sure that we serve you and serve you well. With that said, let's get started. So at New Life, who are we? When I started this practice 13 years ago, which is kind of a wow, we were kind of going over with some of our market partners our go-to-market plan, who we are, and what makes us different. And one of the things that came up, one of the comments that came up is, you know what? You're really entrepreneurs that just happen to be CFOs. And we do embrace that fully. And here's how we embrace that, especially with our CFOs. So our CFOs, in addition to having 10 to 15 years, sometimes 25 in the CFO's seat, yes, some of us are actually that old, we also look for people that have spent time in operations. They've been a division leader. They've been a COO. They've been a general manager, a president. In fact, 3 of us have owned our own companies. We look for that because we think having sat on the other side of the desk makes us a much better empathetic financial partner to the CEOs that are trying to run their business. So we look for that in somebody's background. And frankly, we look for one other factor in their background. We want CFOs with some humility in their engagement. And one of the factors that we look for in that is we want to know about the scars on your back and where you stubbed your toe or gotten caught in a bear trap. And how did you get out of that? Because what we find is when executives, CFOs, have experienced their own personally induced difficult times in their professional career, they are much more empathetic to our clients' situations because they've worked themselves out of it. They know the stress of those sleepless nights. So I just wanted to share that with you. We think it's important, but that's up to you to decide. As we talk about New Life, one of the things that we really want to make sure that we convey to you is our mission statement. This is the core of our foundation. It represents our DNA. It also represents our accountability to ourselves and to you. So with that said, I'll start off with, we are here to use our God-given gifts, right? Because we know that we've been given certain gifts and God expects us to play with those gifts to our benefit, to your benefit, to his benefit, and to serve others in a God-honoring way. That's a great criterion that has very few caveats. You either are or are not serving somebody in a God-honoring way. Lastly on this page, it says to proactively engage our clients in a confrontational manner to ensure your long-term aspirational goals are achieved. So what is confrontational? For us, that means we're here to arm wrestle with you. We're here to push the agenda. We're here to make sure things happen. We're also here to debate. If we think you're on the wrong track, we're going to engage in those conversations. Yes, respectfully, always respectfully, but never shyly. We're going to step into that area because for us, it's okay to have that conversation in which we are debating back and forth about what is or is not the right deal. But it's never okay to avoid that conversation because weakness does not suit a good CFO well. Quite frankly, there's a 4th bullet that we're considering putting on here, and I'm going to go and share it with you right now. And that's a part of our mission is to make sure that the people who are not in your boardroom are taken care of. Because let's face it, most great entrepreneurs consider the employees, their vendors, and possibly their customers as an extension of their family. And they take it very personal that they want to care for those people and see those people's lives flourish just to the same extent that the business flourishes itself. So we actually challenge our CFOs that when you're going into that boardroom, you need to know that you are there for a reason. Yes, it's to do better, to push the company forward, but you are also there to take care of the people who are not in that boardroom. They need somebody that is looking after their best interest, and so we want to always be taking on that role. So let's talk about a CFO or a fractional CFO, and this comes from when I first started the business, so it's not quite brand centric, but I think it's still meaningful. Because just like Hillary needed Norgay or Reagan needed Stockton to enable their visions, most entrepreneurs need a really trusted advisor right beside them to help navigate the path. So that navigational metaphor is very powerful because you're the number one pilot. You're the one that says we're going to go to Seattle. Us, on the other hand, being your navigational partner, we're going to help to make sure you get there, that the path is clear, you have enough fuel, and you have all the resources that you need, and we're going to plan the way to make sure you get there. But everybody needs a really strong sidekick. So as we go through from everybody needs a good sidekick, when's the appropriate time to have a full-time versus a fractional? So we put this together just to kind of give somebody an insight about when you might need a fractional versus full-time CFO. So a real CFO is not cheap. But the real question about when you need a CFO has to do with size and complexity of your business. Now, most businesses, even if you're down to 2 million, could really benefit from some level of insight and guidance from a really good, what I'll call operational CFO. But here's a good spectrum. If you're 10 million, you just don't have enough CFO work to hire a full-time CFO, right? Then if you did, that CFO is going to be doing, 15, 20% CFO work and a whole bunch of accounting work and maybe analytical work that you're paying a very big sum for to get that out of. And that stays true as we go from 30 million to 50 million, somewhere between 50 and 75. In this deal, we have 75 million as maybe, because at that point, most companies start to have enough complexity in both their financial operations, their financial and capital needs, and their business planning to really bring on a CFO. And certainly at 100 million. Now, frankly, our largest client ever was 300 million. And we were doing a supplemental project for them. But the largest client where we've ever been, really their fractional CFO, has been 120 million. But even with those clients, we started with them when they were 30 and 40 million and helped them to grow. And because of that relationship, we stayed on board well beyond the 75 to 80 million and helped them get to that. And then we helped them hire a really great CFO to replace us. Because at some point in time, if we're really successful, we're going to be replacing ourselves. So what's the next criterion as you're thinking about hiring a CFO? And especially as you're looking at fractional CFOs, again, this is a little not brand centric as I created this too when I first started the firm, but it's still very important. It's important because we want you to step back and say, what do I really need, right? Because what you need versus what type of fractional or interim CFO is very important in your criterion about what you're going to go look for. So I pulled up this movie clip or this movie deal from The Misfits of 1961 because the whole premise of making sure you have the right fit is very important. And clearly, Clark Gable is the misfit in this picture. So there is no wrong answer. It's just, are you getting the right answer? So a lot of fractional and interim CFOs are retired but active. They've already done well in their career. They just don't want to get out of the ongoing nature, the intellectual exercise, if you will, of being a CFO. It's a paternalistic model. It's usually monthly counseling coming in so you can vet your issues, your concerns. Others are truly just in transition. Hey, I just got out of an exit, helped to execute an exit, or there's a turnover in ownership and now I'm looking for whatever's next for me. These people are in transition. They're bright, they have tremendous skills, but they're truly looking for a full-time position. They're fantastic for a project. They are fantastic for a project. But leading a company long-term, just know that you're going to create some churn and some transition and some turnover issues and frictions as you move from this interim solution that's only there for a temporary deal into your next fractional, your next interim, or your next full-time. A lot of people that hang themselves out as fractional CFOs are really very good controllers or accountants. That's not a bad answer, especially if one of your biggest needs is, hey, I really need good governance over my accounting shop. I need somebody to really lead, guide, and direct that. That's really good. So you're a controller, possibly a CFO that's really heavily oriented towards the accounting side. These people are very good at helping you to coordinate and assimilate the historical data in your company so that you can better understand what has happened. They're also fantastic for ERP or financial system migration, implementation, evaluation. They've been sitting there driving that bus for decades. They know the ins and outs of a lot of systems and what can go wrong when implementation's not done well. So in that regard, that's a really good answer. It's also probably not very insightful as far as looking into the future, because their primary deal is making sure your books are good. And a lot of times it's going to be a project-based deal. Clean it up, restructure the accounting process, implement a new system. A lot of CFOs out there are transactionally focused. They're there to help you raise capital. They're there to help you sell your company. They're there to do a recap with a bank or do bank funding. And that's fantastic. But they're there for a transaction. Really, some very smart people out there. Our personal preference is we want to be your CFO, your operational CFO first. Know everything that we can about the business. And if a transaction comes up, then we're ready for that too. We actually believe that makes us a better transactional CFO because we know what really drives the performance of the company. But these people that are well connected to the capital markets and to strategic buyers, don't ignore them because they have a real value to bring in. An interim CFO is really different. I'll describe an interim versus a fractional in that an interim CFO is going to be there 3 to 5 days a week for a very extended period of time. They are sitting in the CFO to fill it on an interim basis as though they are your permanent solution. So if that's the case, why would somebody hire an interim CFO? Well, that's a good question. The primary reasons are they're an extended search that may take 3, 6, 9 months because they're really going to make sure they have the right person for their specific industry and their cultural fit. That could take a while. And so the interim CFO comes in because they still need somebody that's being that financial navigational partner. So you'll see an interim CFO on that. Sometimes you'll see an interim CFO in 2 other situations. First, when a company is getting ready to build itself up to be sold. A lot of heavy lifting in that. But a lot of times in a sales process itself, the CFO is working themselves out of a job because the buyer or the private equity firm probably has their own CFO that they want to drive the ship after the transaction. The other area where you might see an interim CFO is if the company is in distress, going through a turnaround, or maybe heading in or into a bankruptcy. Now, a lot of CFOs, when they're looking for a new opportunity, they really don't want that because they know that's going to be a temporary gig. Unless there's a huge bonus or loyalty bonus at the end of that, they're probably going to shy away from that. In that regard, an interim CFO is a fantastic answer. They're going to be dedicated, they're going to be all in, they're going to be 5, 6, 7 days a week, depending on what you... And they realize that it's only there for a short period of time of 2 to maybe 9, maybe even 12 months, but that'd be at the outside. A fractional CFO is somebody that's really serving multiple companies for an extended period of time. For us, we end up being a part of the financial leadership of a company for a very long period of time, if we do our job well, of course. I personally still have clients from 2014, so I've been their fractional CFO for 11 years. 2 years ago, I helped a company to exit, and I'd been their fractional CFO since 2014. We think that's important that I share 3 to 6 or 7 clients for a variety of reasons. Number one, of course, it lowers the cost to any individual company because I'm not there full-time, right? They don't need me full-time. Number two, with us being an ongoing part of your leadership team, we really start to know how things work in that company. We really start to know how each other on your executive team works as a team and how to complement their skill sets to help them move their initiatives forward. But at the same point in time, being a fractional CFO is very liberating for me. If I have 7 or 8 clients, so think about this, it allows me the economic freedom to be that very confrontational person with you, right? We're going to arm wrestle. We're going to tell you sometimes that the king has no clothes on, and that's an uncomfortable conversation at times for the person receiving it. They're not used to that. And so it enables us to have that conversation, knowing that if the honesty and clarity in that conversation results in us getting fired, well, you're not destroying my economic well-being because I still have lots of clients behind me. So it's really an enabling factor for us that we think is very important. So as we go forward, here's the other economic reason about why a fractional is really well done. So if you're considering a fractional versus a full-time CFO, really a qualified CFO, is going to have a base salary of $250,000. And I know of very few that have a base salary of less than $250,000. And I'm telling you, I know that because I've helped 2 clients in the last 2 years hire a full-time CFO to replace me. They're also going to want bonus opportunity. It's somewhere at a bare minimum, 25%, but an opportunity to go up to as much as 50%. Because a really good CFO is going to drive tremendous performance throughout your company and should be able to do that within a pretty short period of time, short being 6-9 months. And here's the real kicker. A lot of CFOs become wealthy because of equity that they have in their companies. So unless you're willing to give up equity for a full-time CFO and you really want a true CFO, a full-time CFO may not be the right answer. Now for a fractional, it's kind of like leasing a car. You don't have to, it's not renting a car or leasing a car. You don't have to own it for its full life. You buy as much CFO as you need. For a smaller company, that might mean somebody's going to come and visit you monthly, just sit there and go over your financials and tell you where things are not working or where they are working. And for the things that are not working, how to fix them. Here's the initiatives and here's the path forward. This could be 250, 300. There's some fractional CFOs that are more than 300, but those people have 15, 20, sometimes 25 years in the seat and are very well connected and really know how to change a company. In fact, that's an important thing, a difference between a fractional CFO and a consultant. And I'm not being dismissive of my consultant brethren, but sometimes we say a consultant is the person that's coming in there, they're going to do a deep dive, they're going to interview everybody, they're going to find out what's working or not, they're going to do a lot of analytics, which is all fantastic. And then they're going to come up there with their 50, 100 slide PowerPoint presentation, tell you everything they found, what should be fixed, and what it'll look like afterwards. And unfortunately, they walk away then. Our job is to roll up our sleeves and use that operating experience that we have to make sure the good objectives get identified, prioritized, and implemented and realized. Realized is the most important one. Why pay for a consultant if they're just going to tell you what's broken and nothing changes? We're there to help make it change. The other thing that's really important about a fractional is the many-to-one relationship. So I have fractional CFO peers out in the marketplace, really bright people. And for a lot of them, there are 1 or 2 people, maybe 3 in the company. So especially for the single shingles, and there's some really bright ones out there, look very carefully at their experience and go back to, is that the fit for me? Because they can't leverage anybody else, right? Here at New Life and some of my larger competitors, we have 17 professionals. Some of my larger competitors have 30, 40 CFOs in this marketplace. And we are very intentional to make sure that that one CFO can leverage everybody else in the company on an as-needed basis for their expertise. Implementing a system, an M&A transaction, a due diligence, whatever it may be, we have supplemental skill sets that go into that. There's a couple of industries that we're not good at. And when we hear from a prospect says, oh, I'm in medical practices. Well, the reinsurance game in medical practices, I will guarantee you're either a genius or you're an idiot, right? We don't have those skills. So I call up some of my competitors that I know have those skills richly. And I introduce them because that's just the right thing to do. But it's very powerful to know that when you're hiring a fractional, you're actually hiring a lot more people and skill sets than just the one person in front of you. So at New Life, we want to make sure that we have people that fit our culture and that we know how to fit your culture. So we use Culture Index. A lot of y'all know about this because Culture Index has almost become ubiquitous. Culture Index, Predictive Index, those are very similar. You may know of DISC. We like Culture Index better. But what it tells us is, what is this person's work style? Are they proactive? Are they reactive? What is their patience? What's their attention to detail? How creative is their problem solving skills? Are they factually based? Are they heart based in their decision making? And then what we do is we're going to run the same test on you and your leadership team, because we want to make sure that there's complementary people and personalities in that room to serve you, right? So that's just step one. Step two at New Life is we are going to look at a cognitive test, right? So it's not just a work style, communication style survey test. This gets into what is your math reasoning, your logic reasoning, and your verbal reasoning as an executive professional. It's not an easy test. Culture Index will take me about 15 minutes to do. This test will take me 90 minutes to an hour to do, or to 2 hours to do. So this test will take me between 90 minutes and 2 hours to complete. It's rigorous. And what it does is, if I do well at one point, the next set of questions are harder. The next set after that are harder, because it's looking for your inflection point about where you no longer have your strengths. And it's an incredible feedback deal. So we know that you have the right skills to be put into tough situations. The other things that we look at is, what are the skill sets of this person? And we will, when we're sitting there placing the CFO, we're going to look for cultural fit, but we're also going to look for skills fit. And that could be industries, and it could be transactional background, or things of that nature, that we've dealt with turnarounds, that we've dealt with an M&A situation, that we've dealt with system implementation. So what are your big skills? And again, this is where the many to one comes into play. Investing in one person, you have one set of skills. Investing in a firm, you have 10, 15, 35 different skill sets to bring to bear. But are skill sets really enough, right? So a lot of times we found at New Life that if a CFO is coming from a corporate environment, they're used to the corner office. That's great. I love the corner office myself. But they're also used to everybody knowing what a CFO is in a very elevated, sophisticated world. That's not true for a lot of entrepreneurial companies. It's a rodeo, right? It's a Wild West kind of thing. And so with New Life, when a new CFO comes on board, we complement what they're doing with outstanding technology tools that automate a lot of their analytics, their reporting, their dashboards, probably best in class, quite frankly. We're very proud of that. We have other tools to accentuate AI and make sure that the analytics of that is working for you. And then we have presentation tools to where we could literally go from close to boardroom ready in about 2 hours. It also helps to automate some of our analytics. So we want to make sure that you're not paying for a CFO to do spreadsheet monkey stuff. We have a complement of senior financial analysts that do a whole bunch of our spreadsheet stuff, but we want to make sure our CFOs are giving you strategic insight. So we automate, we enable, and we push it through a very robust tech stack. What we also do, and this may sound interesting, is we spend the first 3 months with them through a entrepreneurial CFO training program. We train them about our tools, our cultures, all the things to make them a better CFO that we've developed over our 12 years. We also invest in helping them to understand how to use tools like Culture Index on their clients, how to read those charts, send them off the training. And then we also train them in EOS because it is ubiquitous in many of your companies. So we put them through a rigorous training process. We also have peer group meetings. Every other week, our CFOs get together and they share best practices and biggest problems and look for common cures where we can say, oh gosh, I've seen that before. This is how I've handled it. The client did well on this. They kind of push back on that. So that shared experience, we're very intentional to make sure that the one can leverage the many. What else is going on? So for us, we have found that a lot of our clients really don't know what to expect from the benefit of hiring a CFO. I get it. Some of you have hired bookkeepers or accountants that have the title of CFO, and you're confused about, am I hiring an accountant or am I hiring a CFO? In those cases, we call that title inflation, to where the controller that you have actually has a CFO title, but they're not doing CFO work. So we get it. It's a big number, can be a big number. It's a bigger number than your accountant or your controller, that's for sure. So what we've done is we've developed 4 to 5 diagnostic assessments. They're one-time assessments that allow us to dive deeply into your company and come up with great observations, cures, fixes, and opportunities to improve the process. They also allow us to lay out a plan of action over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months with identified initiatives, identified deliverables, and an estimated identified financial impact. This way, after this one-time assessment, you can determine, is it worth investing more? For us, we find it the best way to lower the risk and improve the visibility of hiring a CFO. Lower the financial risk so you're not committing to something long-term. Improve the visibility so you know what you should be getting once we're fully engaged. Lastly, our commitment is on these things, and we'll do another presentation about what are these exactly. But ours is to help you dive in and really radically, quickly improve your operations. Insight 2911 is really driving EBITDA, cash flows, and sustainable performance. Sweat equity into gold is to make your company more valuable in the eyes of a buyer and not in your eyes, because I will guarantee you, your eyes are not the same as a buyer. Accounting wellness tells us how well your back office is working. We do not use that to fire anybody. We use that to help build professional development plans to integrate software, things of that nature, to make it work more efficiently so that they can deliver great information so you can deliver great decisions. And lastly, IVOS, Investor Value Optimization Service. Really, it's a combination of the other three and some other nuances to help drive EBITDA and sustainable performance and valuation improvement after an acquisition. We want to streamline the operations, shore up the back office, and then push on EBITDA and value creation. I hope this helps you understand where you could go for hiring a full-time versus fractional CFO or an interim CFO. And of course, I hope it helps you to understand where New Life may be of greater value to you and what you're seeking. With that said, thank you very much for your time and look forward to hopefully scheduling a call with you. You take care.